All right, let's jump right into this explainer and explore what is honestly a fascinating medical mystery. What actually happens after a homeopathic remedy is given? Because, as it turns out, writing the prescription is really just the beginning. The ultimate test of a practitioner's skill? That lies entirely in decoding the follow-up.
We've got a highly structured clinical playbook to get through today. We'll start by establishing a reliable baseline, move through Kent's 12 classic observations, then look at Vithoulkas' multidimensional framework. After that, we'll compare the two approaches and wrap up with some absolutely vital clinical safety overrides. Let's get to it.
So, the remedy is given. Now what? You might actually think prescribing the remedy is the hard part. But, as we're going to see, the true skill of the practitioner lies in reading what happens next. It's all about interpreting the trajectory of a patient's symptoms, their emotional state, and their energy with absolute clarity, and crucially, knowing exactly when to intervene.
Section 1. Establishing a reliable baseline.
This brilliantly illustrates our starting premise. You absolutely cannot measure true healing without an exact, rock-solid starting point. As Dr. James Tyler Kent stated, the practice begins with disciplined observation, not just automatically giving another dose of medicine. If you don't know exactly where the patient started, you're essentially flying blind. You can't possibly know if they're actually improving, deteriorating, or, just experiencing a temporary fluctuation.
So the crucial point here is that a follow-up is not just casually asking, "Hey, how are you feeling?" It is a rigorous scientific measurement against 4 exhaustive baseline pillars. Step 1 demands a clear clinical diagnosis and a solid understanding of the disease's natural history. Step 2 requires an exact symptom and functional profile. We're talking sleep, mood, physical complaints. Step 3 brings in the hard data, objective biomarkers, vitals, lab results. And finally, Step 4 accounts for all other exposures, things like conventional drugs, stress, diet. Why is Step 4 so incredibly vital? Well, if you don't track external stressors, you might mistakenly blame a remedy for a patient just having a terrible week at work. Without all 4 of these pillars, your baseline is practically useless.
Section 2. Kent's 12 classic observations.
Now that we have our baseline, let's look at the timeline. What's really fascinating about this specific progression is how Kent visualizes what we might call the timeline of a storm. Notice that sharp spike in symptoms happening right on day 1? To the untrained eye, making a patient feel worse looks like a complete failure. But to a master practitioner, no way. That short, intense aggravation actually signals a highly favorable, deep healing response, kicking in by week 1 and leading to a sustained, long-term recovery.
On the flip side, if we look at observation 1, we see a completely different and frankly alarming story. Here, a prolonged aggravation begins on day 1, it continues completely unabated into week 2, and ends in a progressive, rapid physical decline by month 1. This is a grave pattern. It indicates low vital reserve or advanced tissue destruction. It's exactly the kind of trajectory that tells the practitioner the patient's health is failing and urgent reassessment is absolutely required.
We also have to keep our eyes peeled for what's known as superficial palliation, or Kent's observation 5. This happens when there's short-lived symptom relief followed very quickly by a relapse. That initial relief, it's basically a clinical mirage. It requires the practitioner to completely retake the case. It usually means the remedy was only a partial match, or maybe there's an irreversible structural block in the patient's body that's preventing a true cure.
Now this brings us to a really critical term, dangerous suppression. That's observation 12. This acts as a massive warning sign that the practitioner must intervene immediately. Imagine a patient whose severe eczema suddenly clears up in 48 hours, right? Great. But then they immediately develop acute severe asthma. The disease hasn't been cured at all. It's just moved inward to a much more vital organ. This is an adverse direction of pathology and is highly, highly unsafe.
Bizarrely enough, though, not all unexpected twists are a bad thing. If old, historically resolved symptoms briefly return, kind of like a reversed movie reel, Herring's law of cure tells us this is actually a fantastic sign. This is observation 11. The body is effectively unwinding its past pathology from within. The absolute best thing a practitioner can do here, literally sit on your hands and just observe.
Section 3. Vithoulkas' multidimensional framework.
Okay, let's pivot to George Vithoulkas' modern framework. What's really interesting here is that for genuine holistic recovery to happen, it's literally like solving a Rubik's Cube. All 3 of these interconnecting planes must align and improve together.
Vithoulkas insists you cannot just look at physical symptoms in total isolation. You have to measure those complaints right alongside the patient's mental-emotional stability, as well as their overall daily energy and vitality.
And this three-dimensional view is absolutely crucial because, let's face it, practitioners can easily be fooled. Vithoulkas warns us that you can't just take a patient's word that they feel better if the rest of the picture doesn't line up. If physical complaints improve but their mental-emotional state collapses, that is suppression. If they feel great but their blood pressure is surging, that is a dangerous placebo effect. This discrepancy absolutely demands objective validation through functional scales and lab monitoring.
Section 4. Comparing the two approaches.
So, how do these two heavyweight frameworks actually stack up against each other in clinical practice? When we put them side by side, we see a perfect checks and balances system. Kent focuses intensely on the stopwatch, the chronological sequence, the duration, and the intensity of symptoms. Vithoulkas, on the other hand, acts as a structural cross-check, ensuring the healing reaches the deepest energetic and emotional planes of the patient. Basically, Kent gives us the timeline. Vithoulkas gives us the structural depth. Using both ensures a really rigorous, balanced clinical decision-making process.
Section 5. Vital clinical safety overrides.
Let's move to our final and undeniably most important section, where philosophical observation meets objective, high-stakes medical reality. The crucial takeaway here is that homeopathic practitioners are legally and ethically bound by exact safety overrides. If these occur, all the waiting stops and conventional medical emergency protocols take over. Whether it's sudden chest pain, rising creatinine levels, severe allergic reactions, or expanding infections, philosophical waiting is strictly contraindicated. The practitioner must halt all observation and trigger immediate medical referrals, no exceptions.
The source material is remarkably strict on this specific point. It demands absolute objective reality over subjective optimism when evaluating a patient's safety. You can never, ever explain away a surging HbA1c or worsening renal function as just a healing crisis. Objective physiological decline always overrides a favorable philosophical narrative.
Which leaves us with this provocative thought about the immense responsibility of reading the follow-up. If a patient claims they feel happier, but their vital signs are destabilizing, are you observing a healing crisis or ignoring a medical emergency? It emphasizes that true clinical mastery requires knowing exactly when to stop philosophizing and start acting. The art of the follow-up isn't just about finding the cure, it's about safeguarding the patient every single step of the way. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you see.